Yeah, I'm a trans woman, pre-transition for now. Did get diagnosed with gender dysphoria, but I do not think that there's more than two genders. I think that non-binary is bullshit. I think neopronouns are bullshit, and I think that xenogenders are bullshit. Not only do I think it's bullshit, but I do think it makes the trans community look bad and is negative for pushing for our rights.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't really agree with the xenogender stuff either. Based on my general understanding and approach that I take with gender. So we might agree on that, maybe. But yeah, I see you say you're also transmedicalist.
Yes,
So what
I
what
believe that
exactly? How would you define yourself as transmedicalist? Like, how would you define yourself? What do you mean by that?
So I believe that like a person who is actually trans is somebody who actually has gender dysphoria and they actually seek medical transition, assuming they actually haven't already. Right. Like, so for example, like Blair White, they already seek medically transition. Right.
So
So like,
so it's somebody who has either who is in the process of seeking treatment or has already received treatment. You'd say.
yes, like, yeah, like someone who
So
actually
it's
has
not
gender dysphoria
who
and then
had
they
or who
actually are.
had gender dysphoria, right?
Repeat that again.
It's not just currently has gender dysphoria, though, according to your definition, right? It's called also like, because the thing I always say to that is, well, if you have somebody who's gone through treatment and they don't have gender dysphoria anymore, they're still trans.
Yeah, like for like, yeah, because I see being trans as like a medical thing. Like someone who has gender dysphoria, that's the problem. And
Mhm.
someone having being trans or transitioning is the treatment. You're supposed to alleviate the dysphoria. The end goal is to take away the dysphoria.
Sure, and but the problem is that the gender dysphoria, you're placing the weight of being trans on that when that's just, this comes down every time to just a semantic disagreement almost, because that's just not the definition of trans. It's just somebody who identifies differently. You can identify differently without necessarily having gender dysphoria, right?
Okay, how would you? Okay, why would you transition if you don't have gender dysphoria?
That's, hold on. Maybe you don't transition. This is where I need you to try not to try to think of the definition differently here. Not necessarily transitioning in medical and everything. What if there's somebody, for example, who is more comfortable identifying as a woman, but they're also not really they don't really have a whole lot of distress about their biology, so they're content with their body. They don't have dysphoria, but they also identify as a woman. Is that person not trans?
Wait, so this person is like a male to female person and they identify as a woman?
They would be biologically male and they would identify as a woman, but they would be comfortable with the fact they have a penis. They wouldn't bother going through treatment for it.
Or you don't have to get bottom surgery to be trans. I'm confused.
Okay,
Like,
yeah,
are this person actually trying to like get on
no, but
HRT and
you're
stuff like that?
saying, no, you're saying that they need to have gender dysphoria, right?
Yeah, why would they claim to be a woman or feel like a woman if they don't have dysphoria?
Because you can identify as a woman and feel like a woman without having distress, significant distress that then weighs you down because of the disconnect between your biology and your social identity. There might be someone who has a different social identity, but is also comfortable with their biology. In that case, they would be trans and they also wouldn't have gender dysphoria.
I'm just thinking about this real quick. Hold on. Why would you call them trans then? Like you're just a feminine guy at that point. It's
No,
okay to be like a
because they
you're not
still
a strong
identify
person.
differently. They still identify differently. But their difference in identity and the fact that their mental identity or their social gender identity is different from the biology that's usually correlated with that social identity doesn't bring them distress. There are people like that. If they aren't brought on or if they aren't given distress from that mismatch, they wouldn't
And
have
they're
gender
not
dysphoria.
trans.
No, you're wrong. They are trans
How
because
am I wrong?
they are
Maybe
trans because they still identify with a gender that does not correlate with biology that right now we've socially correlated with the gender identity. So if they are born with a penis and they're raised as a boy, and then they get older and they identify as a woman, they might not be uncomfortable by their biology.
okay. Again, you mentioned earlier it might be a semantic difference. Like the way I see it is like these people, like the person you're talking about right now, The reason why I consider them like not to be trans, I guess
He
like
also noted
let's
that I
say
am
I
a
remember
geek
seeing a
and I
clip
should
of
know
Trump,
myself.
right, saying that if he becomes president, he's gonna ban federal like funding for like trans care or whatever, or trans healthcare. And I know that Trump is not just gonna stop there. If becomes president, he's gonna try banning like everything, right, for trans people. I don't think like this person that you're talking about right now, this person you're describing, would ever actually be affected, right? They're not actually gonna kill themselves because like they can't access medical care and everything, right? Real trans people who actually do have a dysphoria and actually are transitioning because they want to alleviate their dysphoria, whatever, are actually going to be are actually going to be affected if
That
they
doesn't make
have
them a
no
real
access
trans person and a non-real trans person. That makes them have real gender dysphoria, and the other person doesn't have dysphoria. But you keep saying the real trans person. That's not what a real trans person is. A real trans person is not somebody who has gender dysphoria. By definition, a real trans person is just somebody whose gender identity differs from the gender identity that is usually correlated with their birth sex.
I understand that's what people like to define it as, right? But like,
It's
for
not what
example, a
people like to
woman
define
is,
it as. It's what the dictionary defines it as, dude.
I mean, the dictionary also defines women as an adult human female. I'm sure you probably disagree with that.
There are varying degrees by which you can, there are different dictionary definitions now for that also. But yeah, I think that
So if
I
I
would
can find a
also,
dictionary
no,
definition
wait,
that
stop, because
supports
there's
me,
also a difference in when the dictionary definition says a woman, adult, human, female. We can talk about how, with social recognition of gender, that definition isn't actually as accurate. Whereas with the trans definition, that definition is accurate. So let me change my argument slightly then, in fairness. I'm not going to say it's correct because it's the dictionary definition, but I'm arguing that the dictionary definition is the correct definition. Because
I
that is
think it's
what
just like a
most
difference
accurately
of,
describes trans people.
I think it's a difference of just semantics difference, I guess. I don't know.
No,
Can I
it's
talk about?
not.
Can
It's
I talk
not.
to you about?
It's not a difference.
Can I talk to you about like non? Do you believe in non-binary stuff or no?
I
He
mean,
didn't believe in xenogenders, but
I
I'm
think
not
that
sure.
people can
Non-binary.
identify as, yeah, like maybe somewhere in the middle of like the gender spectrum, perhaps. But I don't know. I don't really think that I need to get to that. I don't think we need to get to that point of the discussion yet, because I don't think that, I don't think we got anywhere with the first part.
Yeah, I think we're working on two different definitions.
Okay, look. Transgender is defined as denoting or relating to a person whose gender identity does not correspond with sex registered for them at birth. So do you understand how that definition accounts for trans people during treatment, before treatment, and after treatment? That accounts for trans people who have severe dysphoria, mild dysphoria, or no dysphoria. Maybe they have no dysphoria because they've gone through treatment. Do you see how the current definition accounts for all the different types of trans people, including trans people who go through treatment? But the definition
Sure.
also allows for people who don't go through treatment because they don't suffer from dysphoria. They might just have a
Sure.
gender identity that doesn't correspond with their sex registered for them at birth.
Okay, sure. I agree. Like that definition is more broadly defining, and it puts in more people. But my problem is it puts in people who clearly are not trans. If you were to look at this person,
How are
they
you
don't have
saying
any
that?
dysphoria.
But
They don't have
that's
any
not the
dysphoria. They have no
definition of
desire to actually
trans.
medically transition.
You don't need to
Why,
medically transition
why
to
would
be
they? Why would they
trans.
call
That's like
themselves
saying
trans if
someone
they're not
doesn't
actually
have
trying to
depression if they
transition?
don't go on medication. Like it's about whether it's about their
No, because
identity.
depression. No, it's not the same. Because depression is the problem, right? Like that's the actual
You're
like
right. It's not the same,
disorder, the
because that
mental
would be like
disorder.
saying dysphoria isn't real because you don't go in treatment. You're right. That's not actually
Yeah,
a
like
completely fair
I see
comparison.
dysphoria as the actual problem, right? Transgender is the current best treatment. Like that's how I see
But
it. I
okay,
don't.
I get that. But how are you not understanding this? That uh, okay? Do you think it's
I understand
possible?
what
Do
you're
you think it's
saying.
possible for somebody to have a gender identity without that doesn't correspond with their sex registered at birth, and that difference in gender identity could not cause significant distress? Do you think that's possible?
I really don't think so. Unless like you're assuming like you're talking about someone like Blair White who's already transitioned and they don't have distress anymore because
Okay, I
they're
don't know
kind
what
of
to
like,
tell you. Yeah, not everybody's going to have gender dysphoria. The dysphoria is from the mismatch, from the discomfort with your biology. Not everybody has discomfort from the mismatch their biology.
yeah, and these people are cisgender because you don't have a discomfort. There's no
No,
disorder
their
there.
identity is different. So by definition, they're not cisgender because their identity would still be different.
It's more than an identity. Being trans, it's not just an identity. It's not like, oh, it's my favorite sports team. Right? I've heard
I
that
know.
argument before.
Well,
Not
okay.
from you, but like
Wait, yeah,
I'm not sure if it was from.
of course not. No, gender refers to how you your internal perception related to our cultural spectrum of gender. Yeah, I have a pretty strict definition for gender and how it makes sense, both socially constructed and how that can form an internal perception you have of yourself based upon that external social construct. So yeah, of course, no, having a personality or your favorite sports team, that's not a gender. I'm not saying it is.
No, but it's an identity, right? Like being a Christian is an identity, right? Like I don't have to agree with Christianity as a definition, whatever, or like an identity, because like you get what I'm saying? Like it's the same thing with like non-binary. Like people can claim to be non-binary. I just don't believe in it.
Can people identify as a woman?
Yes, you can identify as a woman. Yeah.
Okay. So then if somebody can identify as a woman, then could they identify as a woman and not have severe discomfort
Why
because
would you
of their
call yourself a
biology?
woman at that point? It's like it's.
No,
I
no,
guess
you
it's
keep
kind of the
saying
thing that
why would they do? Because not everybody identifies differently because they're like having dysphoria or they want to.
no, it's kind of the same thing. Like if someone's like out here saying that they're a Christian and they don't do anything Christianity wise, they don't even believe in heaven and hell, they don't have any belief in Jesus, whatever. Why would you even call that person a Christian?
Because
Like
that wouldn't be a Christian. A Christian is somebody whose internal identity, who has an internal belief of themselves regarding Jesus
but it's
Christ.
the same thing.
Just
I
like a
would say
woman is someone whose internal perception of themselves is one that aligns with our cultural views of femininity. You're making my argument right now.
if you're claiming that you're a woman and you don't take any steps to present as a woman or even try medical if you are a biological male and you're saying that you're a woman, you're not taking any actual steps to actually medically transition or even present as a woman, you're not a woman at that. Like why
That's
would you
no
even
wait,
call
wait, wait,
yourself a
hold on.
woman?
Whoa. Do you think that someone is a woman because of the way that they're presenting?
I think yeah, I think it's like a little bit like you have to have the desire to actually medically transition.
Wait,
It's
wait,
not
wait.
like
No,
you can
no, no.
just
Not you didn't
wake up
say
one day and
medically
say you're.
transition. You said that they're not a woman at that point because they're not even presenting. Do you think that if
They're
somebody
not
doesn't
trying to
look
make.
like a
They're not
woman, they're
trying to
not a
make
woman?
any. They're not trying to make any actual steps. Like if you have somebody like I don't forget what their name is, but you have someone who clearly doesn't pass whatever. They're actually trying to like actually like how to put this. They're actually making steps to transition whatever. Like clearly this person's like different than that person who's just not even doing anything.
You're not understanding. Here, let me dial this back again for you, okay? There's somebody who inside, internally, they believe that Jesus Christ is Lord and they profess with their mouth that God has raised him from the dead. That's what the Romans verse says is necessary to be a Christian, right? That's what they do. They never go to church other than that them saying that God has raised him from the dead. They never do anything to present as a Christian, to talk about Christianity, anything. Is that person still a Christian?
They would be a Christian by definition.
They
Yes.
would be?
Yeah, they would be a Christian because they
Okay.
actually
So
believe.
then, if somebody believes that they are a woman, they identify with cultural views of femininity more, their internal perception of themselves aligns more so with that, and they say with their mouth, I am a woman, but they don't present as a woman, they're not wearing a dress. Are they still a woman?
Okay. I'm gonna think about this for. I'm gonna think about this more. That was a good point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's not
Okay.
about presentation, it's about the internal identity. So that's all I'm getting at is that because it's about the internal perception you have of yourself, it doesn't necessitate dysphoria because it's about the internal perception. So the dysphoria is common. The dysphoria is a common part and common struggle of being trans. And it doesn't mean that that's something to be taken lightly or ignored. But on the flip side, it's the identity that holds the weight.
I have a question then. If you think that dysphoria is not needed to be trans, right, or to undergo any treatment or anything, do you think
No,
that
no,
like
to go,
insurance
sorry,
companies?
I'm sorry to cut you off, but to go through treatment, absolutely you need to have dysphoria. You wouldn't get a medical procedure if you didn't first have a medical condition to treat.
Okay. Now, okay. So you think that people who are actually getting medical treatment, these people have to have dysphoria, but someone just saying they're a woman, they don't need any dysphoria for that?
Yes, because that's not what makes you the woman. This is what we're arguing about. Is we're not arguing about dysphoria here or treatment. We're arguing about whether or not you are a woman and whether or not you are valid in your identity.
Do you think a woman is simply just somebody who feels like they just feel like a woman on the
A
inside?
woman is
Like they have
someone
a
whose internal perception aligns with what we culturally view as being feminine. That's how I define a woman. So that's why that's why a woman
you
is a
said it
woman whether
aligns with
they're
what
wearing a
we
dress, whether they're
you said
not
it
wearing it,
aligns with what wait, what did you said it aligns with what we culturally identify with what we
with what
repeat
we
that again?
culturally view as being feminine, an internal perception. So it's not about an external presentation, but a perception you have of yourself that aligns more so with cultural views of femininity, because gender is socially constructed, and that social construct informs an internal perception and identity you have of yourself. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, I'll think about this more.
Okay. Well, I
Okay.
appreciate you coming on.
Okay.